Good evening and welcome to the April 13th, 2021 meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen. With me here tonight, I have Megan Birch-McMichael and Ellen Sturgis, Courtney Persha, and Jim Selvey are remote, and we also have Denise Demkowski, our town administrator, with us. First up, I will entertain any public input. If you could raise your hand, virtual hand, or wave to me.
Oh, Linda.
Hi, Tom.
Linda, what a surprise.
I know, but it's so important. Our ballots have arrived. Yay!
Yay.
So we're getting ready to start mailing out for anybody who has a vote by mail application for the annual election. So get your applications in ASAP, drop them off, email them to us, fill them out, take a photograph, get them to us because the turnaround time is short and I'd like to get those ballots out to you. So that was my main comment. Everything else you can read about on our website.
Well, if I'm correct, you stole part of my thunder, but I believe
No,
voter registration ends the end of this week, right?
yes, Friday at 8 p.m.
So anybody who wants to register to vote can do so.
Please do so.
Is there any other public input? Seeing none, I will move on. And Linda stole part of my thing there, so we'll move on from that. On Wednesday, April 14th at 7 p.m., the Stow Independent, in conjunction with Stow TV, will be holding a virtual candidates night to introduce those whom have stepped forward to elected positions for the May 8th town election. Stow Cleanup Day is coming to Stow on April 24th. Registration is at the Lower Common from 8 a.m. to noon. Additional information can be found on Facebook at the Stow Cleanup page. Many thanks to Sandy Taft and Jennifer Henderson for coordinating this cleanup. Congratulations to Marilyn Zavorsky on her soon-to-be-released book, Celebrating Stow's Women. I'm sure it'll be a fascinating read. And having served for over 10 years on the Board of Selectmen, I understand and appreciate the time needed to provide the town with a level of service and support expected of a selectman and deserved by our residents. Over the past few weeks, regrettably, there have been some changes in my personal and professional life that have caused me to pause and evaluate the time that I'll have going forward. I feel I will no longer be able to provide the level of service required as a selectman and have made the difficult decision to withdraw my name from the Board of Selectmen's race for the upcoming town election. I'd like to thank all the people who supported me over the years, as well as all the dedicated volunteers and employees of the town that continue to make Stow a great place to live. What I'd like everybody to do is please show your support for all the folks that have stepped forward for elected office by voting either by mail or in person at the May town election. These people have stepped forward, they're giving their time. I understand the commitments, and they all should be congratulated for stepping forward.
And Tom, if I might just say thank you for your not only 10 years on the select board, but I think it close to another decade on finance committee,
Somewhere around
something
there.
like that. So you have done more than your share of helping this town move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We won't call it retirement though, because I have a feeling we'll get you back on something.
I'm still going to be around, and you know, I'll keep you, as you said, I'll keep you guys honest. I know where all this stuff's in.
I just wanted to echo those comments. Thank you for all your time on the board. It was great serving with you for so long and also getting to know you and having you become my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And it really has been a pleasure serving with all the people that I have. And I've made a lot of good friends, people that I'll still be in touch with going forward. I'm not planning on going anywhere. So,
And you still got a few more meetings, so.
yep, I'm not done until after May 22nd, and I am counting the meetings at this point. Next up, we have appointments. First one is an appointment for Joe Jacobs to the position of Veteran Services Officer through June 30th, 2022. Joe has put forward his name again, and Denise, I assume you support that decision?
Yes.
All right. In that case, I suppose we can go with a motion.
All right. I move the Board of Selectmen appoint Joseph Jacobs as the town's Veteran Services Officer to fill a one-year term expiring on March 31st, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I,
Jim votes aye, and Courtney? Courtney votes aye. And thank you, Joe, for continuing on. Next up, we have an appointment to the Open Space Committee. Liz Beck has shown interest. Thank you, Liz.
Liz is on the meeting, just so
And-
you're aware.
Liz, if you'd like to introduce yourself quickly.
Hi there, I'm Liz Beck. Excited to be part of the Open Space Committee. Recently moved to Stow and I love it. And I'm very excited to be part of the community and
Thank you for stepping forward. Have any comments or questions from the board?
Just thank you for stepping forward.
All right.
thank you.
I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Liz Beck to the Open Space Committee to complete an unexpired three-year term expiring June 30, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
And Tom, I think
Oh.
Courtney had a comment.
Courtney?
Sorry, Courtney.
Hi Liz, Courtney Pritchett here. I'm curious if you had a chance to visit the Open Space Committee and see them at work.
I have not had an opportunity to visit or even be part of the meetings thus far. I do have an understanding that it's monthly.
Yeah. What is there? Can you say a couple words about what prompted you to choose that particular committee to volunteer for?
Well, I have a particular interest in the open space. I live on Hallett Point, and I'm hoping that this will be part of open space soon enough. My background is event production. A lot of that has to do with utilizing space, bringing people together, and really kind of being creative with the use of space. So it seems like it's a good fit in the creative side of how to really utilize some of the great open space that we have here. Did that answer?
Thank you for stepping forward.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
I think we were halfway through a vote.
Sorry, yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry about that, Courtney. We jumped the gun a little. All
Do you
right,
wanna
all in
read?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
It's Jim
Aye.
and Courtney. Thank you again, Liz. Next up, we have a discussion about the FY 2022 state budget with Representative Kate Hogan and Senator Jamie Eldridge. Kate and Jamie, are you there?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you okay?
Excellent.
Kate,
Well, good evening to the board. Oh, I'm sorry.
is Kate there too?
She is. Yes, she's there.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
All right, just wanted to make sure you didn't
I
get
was
left out there.
muted earlier for that.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Well. Well, thank you to the chairman, to the select board members, and thanks so much for having myself and Representative Hogan before the board to answer any questions and give a presentation on the budget. I do want to say to you, Tom, and did not know that you'd be making that announcement, but I really enjoyed serving with you. It's been a long part of my time representing Stow as the state senator. So I really appreciate your public service and wish you the best with your decision, and just thinking of you and your family. And to you and to the whole board, again, thanks so much for having us. As was mentioned at the beginning, Representative Hogan noted that tomorrow the House budget is out, so obviously I know she'll be focused on that. But in terms of budget numbers, I have for you, and this comes as a joint announcement, from Senate President Karen Spilka and Speaker Ron Mariano, which is just great news, is that they agreed last week on the local aid number, both unrestricted local aid, often known as UGA, and then a commitment to a 1/6 implementation of the Student Opportunity Act, which I do think will help the Neshoba Regional School District. So just so you know that on the unrestricted local aid front, that's a commitment to a 3.57 increase in local aid, and so that will be a increase to $462,000, $670. Recognize that there's always more unrestricted local aid that our communities need, but pleased that first of all, there wasn't a cut last year during the thick of the pandemic, and that we will be doing an increase this year. And then on the education front, which is partly Chapter 70, but now partly an overhaul of the education funding formula through the passage of the Student Opportunity Act last session, is that the Neshoba School District would get for FY22 $7,867,000. That's an increase of $593,000. So that addresses, and again, I recognize more needs to be done, but that reflects incorporating special education costs to teachers, healthcare costs, low income students, and also a general increase in Chapter 70, including a hold harmless provision for more well-off communities, which Stow is generally in that category. So I wanted to let you know that, and again, this is a joint agreement between the House and Senate. So the Student Opportunity Act will be implemented over the next 7 years, including this year. It was delayed last year because of the dramatic drop in the revenues. Revenues are up significantly, and then of course we have the American Rescue Plan funding. So I personally feel optimistic about the budget. The Senate budget will be out in May, so I had my meeting with Senate Ways and Means Chairman Mike Rodricks a couple weeks ago. So in addition to education funding, things like councils on aging, regional transit authorities, funding on the social safety net side, legal services, people that need legal help because of facing eviction or unemployment, which continue to be a large amount of cases to all legislators' offices related to the pandemic. So had that meeting, so I'm feeling optimistic about the budget. Beyond the budget, I did just want to note and would appreciate any clarification perhaps from the town administrator, who, by the way, I want to say hello, and great to be here to present to you in your first time of myself being before the board, and hopefully you're settled in. Denise, is that on the vaccination front, we had some great news yesterday, is that the Department of Public Health approved the Neshoba Associated Board of Health application, which is 16 towns, including Stow, for a regional vaccination clinic at Devon's. So that's something that Representative Hogan and I were advocating for And I went to the site today just to check it out. It's a veterans center at Devon's that very kindly offered their building up for vaccination clinic. And so the hope is that will be up and running by mid-May. At first thought that seems a while away, but it's actually going to come up pretty quickly. And so, wanted to let you know that. I also know that Stow also entered a partnership for a proposal for Marlborough, Hudson, Berlin, and Stow. And so I don't have any more details about that. But just to give a sense about sort of the flow of vaccinations is that, the district I represent also includes Westborough, Northborough, Southborough. They had a separate regional vaccination clinic proposal, which was accepted a month ago. They had not received any vaccines, but we got notice today that they have received their vaccines, and the Westborough Doubletree Hotel will be opening up their clinic later this week. And that's something that's open to all residents across the state with a focus on, local residents that are in that vaccination clinic agreement. Gets a little confusing, but I guess I just want to communicate that, we are fighting hard for more vaccines for the region. I know there's concerns that there's a bit of vaccination deserts in some parts of Metro West, including Stow. So wanted to let you know the good news, and we'll continue to update the board on when vaccines come to the Devon's site, which again, we're hoping is mid-May. And besides that, I just wanted to highlight that I'm sure we're all familiar that President Biden and the congressional delegation is talking about at least a $2 trillion infrastructure package with quite a broad interpretation of what infrastructure could be. So, certainly I want to communicate to, each of the towns I represent is thinking about either shovel ready or shovel appropriate infrastructure projects. So obviously, that would be in touch with Congresswoman Trahan, but I did talk to her office last week just to talk about what that might look like, which I think it's still unclear, but it was good to talk to her about that. And, any way I can serve as a resource or a middle person on that, please let me know. So that is the extent of my update. I won't talk about other bills or policy other than to say, just because I know there were so many Stow residents that were so active, and I know a number of the members of the board who are very passionate about climate change and combating global warming, is that, very pleased, along with the House, of course, on passing into law the Next Generation Roadmap bill just a couple of weeks ago, something that, I had worked very hard on last session. And many folks in Stow with a wide number of environmental organizations have been fantastic advocates. So, I don't think this bill would have happened if not for the advocacy of activists and advocates at the local level. And Stow is absolutely one of the more active towns I represent on the issue around climate change. And my final comment is on affordable housing. I just wanted to communicate that related to the pandemic, continue to advocate for money for rental assistance and preventing evictions. I serve as the Judiciary Committee Chair this session, again, on the Senate side. So, I'm certainly keeping track of evictions in Massachusetts. But at the end of the day, it's about building more affordable housing. And so I continue to be very vocal in, asking, sometimes pushing the communities I represent to build more affordable housing. Stow truly is a model for building affordable housing. It really is, and I really appreciate that. And any way my office can be a resource for building additional affordable housing, including increasing state subsidies to build truly affordable housing and not housing that's sort of the upper end of the average median income scale. So thanks so much for having me, and always great to be here with Representative Kate Hogan. We are terrific partners, and we've partnered on a number of state grants and projects in Stow, and excited to continue that this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board?
We finished maybe?
I was gonna let Kate go on it, yeah.
I just figured we'd get to the best part last. All right, please feel free.
Tommy.
Please, Kate.
Thank you. First, if I could just say, I want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to Tom Ryan for his decades of dedicated service to the town of Stow. You've been a leader in town during good times, and you've been a leader in town during bad times and hard times, and you always offer your time and experience and are always willing and have been willing to roll up your sleeves. I'm thankful to have had you as a colleague in government and a friend who always told it like you saw it, and that is worth its weight in gold in so many ways. I hope time away might bring you back to public service eventually, at some time in the near future, but no matter, Tom Ryan, may the road rise to meet you always. Congratulations on your service. Good luck on some time away.
Thank you, Kate.
So, we're a year into the pandemic, and we have a new 192nd session beginning remotely, which we worked extremely hard on to achieve so that all of our membership can participate freely in the process of government and the process of voting and deliberation. And we're mighty proud that we've been able to do that, maintain it, and continue on. We've had virtually a year of generational legislation being passed, and we're very proud of the work that we've done. I have a new role as Speaker Pro Tem. I'm very excited with it and delighted and grateful to the Speaker for this opportunity for me and for Stow and all my other community towns. The House and Senate have taken action over the last year to assist the Commonwealth, our workers and our businesses since the initial lockdown, when we were able to get ourselves up and running, all the way to most recently averting steep increases in unemployment insurance rates, tax relief for recipients of the PPP loans, and we've also offered sick leave to workers who need to get vaccinated. That was our most recent piece of legislation. We also have the Holyoke Home Bond Bill coming up this week. But as Jamie mentioned, we have already passed in this session, having not quite passed and made it over the finish line, the climate roadmap to 2050. And I will take a bow for the House on the environmental justice provision that has been codified into state law, defining both environmental justice populations and processes by which certain companies need to go through in order to build what they're looking to build. And it's a bevy of legislation and incentives to bring us closer to a green future for everyone. The FY22 budget debate will begin in earnest this week with consensus revenue about 3.5% over last year's numbers, but in fact our revenue has been much higher than that. We still approach it in a somewhat conservative fashion, anticipating that there'll be ups and downs as we move forward. But Massachusetts will also be receiving about $45 billion from the American Rescue Plan, with an additional $3.5 billion going directly to cities and towns. We believe, and the Speaker's spoken directly, that these funds will help the legislature assist our state in recovery, and also believes that we need to get people back to working meaningful and promising careers. And so there's so much that we have learned in the pandemic. That's going to be a focus for the House, certainly. And I would just say generally learning from the lessons of the pandemic is going to be an opportunity for us. We have lost so much. We have lost good people, and we have all suffered privately from that, I know, and I offer my serious condolences to anyone that has experienced that loss. It's been a very emotional year or so, but we are committed to learning from the lessons of the pandemic, whether it's healthcare, education, housing, jobs, so many other aspects of recovery. And, we need to have the hand of recovery on everything that we do in the next year, so that, government is is touching everyone's lives in positive ways, that we're helping business sectors that have been, just demolished, get back on their feet, and helping our schools get back. What can we do? Where can we go beyond even the school year into the summer? We know that there's going to be a lot of work to do, and we're ready to do it. And I have a whole list of ways that there was federal and state aid offered to Stow, but I won't get into all of them. I do want to mention that I was proud to secure $10,000 for the Stow Food Pantry in the COVID-19 relief supplement budget. And I think it was needed and it was helpful, I think, always, hopefully it's helpful. And also 6 Stow small businesses were collectively awarded about $275,000 in grants through the Massachusetts COVID Small Business Grant Program. And those things, we were given the names, especially of folks that got some of the larger grants, and making those phone calls, whether it was in Stow or other places. And you heard somebody on the other end of the line virtually sighing in a way that it was a difference between, are they going to close their doors or they're not going to close their doors. I tell you, it makes being in government so worthwhile. I just can't even tell you. We are looking at local aid. We know that there have been increases by the governor. I would anticipate there will be increases in this House budget, and then it will go over to the Senate. And we know that in education, the Student Opportunity Act will be funded as it should this year. Jamie spoke to that, I think, very well. And I also wanted to mention that and you've probably seen this if you're on my Stow page, but the Stow Gleasondale Bridges is going to be back on and will be a project in progress. It's already started. They're taking out utilities and things in this month, I think this year, or this construction year, should we say. One side will be done, and then the next year the other side will be done. So within 2 years we'll have a project that is complete, but for some trees and foliage and working around. I know they were working on maybe some ramps and things like that. So I think that's really good news. At no time will the bridge be closed, and that will continue on through the project. I just want to say one more thing, which is that to all veterans in the area, spouses and caregivers as well, there is a COVID-19 vaccination clinic at the Hudson VFW, and that's at 3 Palmieri Drive, May 16th from 12 to 5 p.m. And I just wanted to let folks know that, because it's just a drive-up walk-in. They're not having registration. So I wanted, again, veterans, spouses, and caregivers, May 16th, 12 to 5 at the Hudson VFW at 3 Palmieri Drive. And if there are especially any seniors or any veterans that have not been vaccinated, please take the opportunity. I was fairly assured that they would, you would be there for the second. You'd be given your certificate, as in most places, with the second dose. So that's pretty much a lot of what I had. I don't want to do too much because I don't want to take up your whole meeting, but we're glad to be here. I was going to say I'm glad to see all of your faces, but many of you. Glad to see you behind that curtain, everybody. Anne. Yeah. David. Anyway, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions, comments from the board? Ellen?
I guess I don't.
Megan?
I don't have any, no?
Jim? Courtney?
Denise does.
Nice, that's a question.
I've got 2 very quick ones, if nobody else does. Jamie, Kate, both of you, thank you very much for coming, as you always do, and giving us that update. 2 very quick questions, I'll just throw them out there for anybody. What do you hear, if anything, about CPC match? I know it's a little early for that, but I'm just wondering if you hear anything. And second question is something I admit I probably should know the answer to. What is the status of the MBTA service cuts, especially in light of all the anticipated federal infrastructure money? Can we expect those to be reversed or mitigated?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Jim. Regarding the CPC, if you're talking about the state match, the legislature did increase the state match, although because so many communities, of course, have become CPA communities, it was down to, I think it was approaching 13 or 14%. And so I think with the increase last session to the registrar of deeds fees, it was, I think, up to about 27% or maybe 30%, but I don't think there'll be any action, not only this session on that, but for many years, because usually when the state, increases the fee, we don't revisit it for many years. So I think it'll pretty much stay there for a while, and I wouldn't expect it would change, which is frustrating, but just to be upfront.
Okay. There's a good side to that too. It was fluctuating so much in prior years, but I interrupted you.
Oh, forgive me, and I was just on the MBTA service cut. So I serve as the Senate co-chair of the MBTA caucus. So when the MBTA and Governor Baker, put out their original proposed cuts, we sent a letter opposing those cuts, and a lot of the congressional delegation weighed in. So some of those cuts were already going to be restored. I don't know I don't think there's a full restoration, so I will double check on that and see obviously how that impacts commuter rail service. I think it's safe to say still now, not when people are taking the commuter rail, but hopefully that will be back to normal, in the fall. But I will double check on that. But we did send in a letter opposing the cuts. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we did, and I also wanted to reflect on CPC in terms of there's a robust real estate market. I'm just not sure that there's a volume in real estate, which is why prices are so darn high right now. But that's sort of to reflect on what CPC funds are coming in. No matter what percentage they're at, it's always good when there's enough money to fill the coffers and therefore to come back to us at the CPC. So
Thank you both.
I just have a follow-up question on transportation, maybe more generally. Maybe this is more just a request as if this federal money actually comes in, which I have to say I'm a little cynical right now, but I'm just hoping that we can start talking about transportation that's not just about going into Boston. I think the pandemic is sort of showing us that the patterns are changing, and those of us out here sort of on the X side of the suburbs really don't have any service at all. And I would love to see the state being more proactive on how we're gonna develop transportation sort of across what I would call the typical highway, what's the word?
Corridor. Yeah.
The corridors, yeah. So I don't know if you have anything. I know, we've gotten a couple different grants for different pilot programs, but I think we really need to start talking more about public transportation, especially, tying into the climate change bill.
if I could just say, because I've spent a whole lot of years getting money invested through earmarks and various sources to create our regional transportation network. And I know that we're going to have some monies allocated for the commuter rail for Stow, and I think that is an important start. If you need to start somewhere once we're over COVID, and also seeing if folks are returning to the idea of getting on a bus or if cars are going to become more important again. But across the region, I have been able to institute a regional transportation, small projects. But for instance, in Hudson, we're actually able to create a regional transit line. So we have one that's running from Hudson to Marlborough. And I know in Maynard, we have, Jamie and I have ensured that these monies were there and distributed for our Maynard and Acton. So, you know, in ways we have begun to do that, and you know, there's also ways that I'm thinking about a regional, you know, the MPO sort of taking more of a focus on our area, because I feel like it really affects us in terms of our planning, our implementations, and how we work across our town. So really good point, I think, Ellen.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. I'll just add to what Representative Hogan said is, first of all, you know, I just want to thank her because she really has been the lead for whether it's earmarks or state grants for, you know, the expansion of the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, whether we're talking about, you know, Acton, Maynard, Hudson, Marlboro, Stow. So that's been really, really critical. And in terms of this, whether we're talking about the proposed infrastructure bill or there are funds in the American Rescue Plan that I think could be used for infrastructure, is, you know, I'd really encourage you to reach out to Congresswoman Trahan's office if there are any quote-unquote shovel-ready projects in Stow that would.
They were talking a long time before it connected.
Who's that?
Sorry.
Same with selectmen.
And just to continue is so there's that piece, and then hopefully folks are aware that the legislature, I believe, will vote this session to advance the millionaires tax to go to the ballot for November 2022, and so that by taxing those who earn over $1 million in income will raise about $2 billion, and in the constitutional amendment it states that half of that must go for transportation. And so I completely agree with you, Ellen. You know, we need regional equity, and so, you know, the more that, you know, communities can come together about, is that improved, you know, shuttle service, is that actually bringing, you know, bus service out to Metro West, you know, bottlenecks like, you know, 495, 990, or obviously the continued progress on rail trails, but, you know, making that more robust. The more, you know, guidance or ideas we get from select boards and, you know, planners and other transportation enthusiasts in each community, the more we can make sure that that money goes to projects that benefit towns like Stow. So thanks very much for the question, and I'm very optimistic there'll be some real money, you know, coming to Metro West over the next few years.
Denise, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment. I wanted to thank Kate and Jamie for your work with the COVID vaccines. I know you guys have been on some of our regional meetings and have heard the frustration that we've all had about trying to get vaccinations here. So I appreciate your efforts. Hearing about the Neshoba Regional Vaccination Clinic was very exciting. Although I think now the 16 communities are trying to scramble to figure out the logistics of how to implement that and to still meet the requirements that the state has put in place. So we're going to start those discussions soon and hope that we will be ready to go when and if vaccines are distributed to this area. But I really want to thank you both for your time on that.
Madam Town Manager, I also, if you are looking for partners, pharmacists in particular, in the project that you're working on, I may be helpful. I can't promise anything, but, and if you have them, that's great. But if I might be able to be helpful, so we should probably chat in the next week or so.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Kate, Jamie, thank you very much. Very
Thank
much
you.
appreciate all you guys have done for us. And Kate, it's hard to believe that the Gleasondale Bridge is finally getting done after about 5 years, huh? I think that's what you said 5 years ago. Yeah, it'll be about 5 years.
Well, you know, there was that last year, so it's 6. Right.
I just forgot about that one. But
I know.
it is hard to believe it's been that long. But thanks for all your help, Jamie.
Everybody, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, certainly so many of you are really on the front lines in some ways, And thank you, Chief, for all the work that you're doing and out there in front of things. Everybody on the select board, you know, we're taking thousands of emails, hundreds and hundreds of calls through the last year. I know that you're probably dealing with the same issues, and just appreciative of everything that everybody's done, as hard as it was. It's really great to see the best in everyone, and we certainly have seen that with this. So thank you, everybody, and God bless. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Boo.
Next up, we have Chief Sallese with an updated policy. Another one,
Another policy.
another policy. This is an updated policy, though.
That's right.
Yes, yes.
Chief,
Good evening.
how are you tonight?
Doing well, thank you very much for having me tonight. As stated, it is an updated policy. Over the past month, you were able to help me get my supervisors back up to a number that is workable right now with making Dave Hogan an acting sergeant. So this policy is a change in how we are going to do the actual promotion process for sergeant. The old policy was more of a test-based system with no community input, and I'm changing it to, I'd like to change it to an evaluation process, which bring members of the public who are included in the advisory board to sit in on this promotional process. And this it'll take a few months because it's not only going to be a promotional process with oral boards between the community and members of the department, but I'm going to be bringing in police chiefs from other areas, and this will evaluate the leadership position within those officers that want to excel. And this policy is just going to put in place a better way for us to keep our succession training going and ensure that we get the right individual helping lead our department to where we want it to go. The sergeant's positions are really our first-line supervisors. They answer the questions that younger officers have. They update the officers on the command on how we want things done as a town and as the chief's office needs it done. And they are also ready to take charge of anything that happens. So we always need somebody who is ready to take that next position ahead of them as well as behind them. So I know that there is probably about between 5 and 6 officers that want to go for this position internally, and we want to get this going as quick as we can. And I did send out the promotional policy. There is a couple of changes after reviewing it, after I did submit it though. I would just like to, because there was a few drafts, I did leave in some stuff that I'd like to take out. If you have seen it under, I believe it's on page number 3, under section 4, or is section 4, 3B, their outside recruiting will occur during the 7 days of internal posting, except for deputy chief or chief of police. That was taken right out of the contract, so I'd like to just remove the except for deputy chief or chief of police, because this is just really dealing with the sergeant's position, not anything else. And then the other changes I propose are also in section 4A. An officer must be a full-time permanent member employed for at least 5 years. It doesn't have to be with our department, because we do have the availability to hire somebody from the outside if we need to. And officers must be in good standing with either the department they've worked for or for the Stow Police Department. And then remove section C. Those are the additional changes that I'd like to make on the proposed policy that I presented to the board. Other than that, I think it's going to be a good policy, and it's going to be a tough process that individuals are going to have to go through, but it is a tough job, and we want what's right for our community. Any questions?
I just want to clarify, so, because I'm seeing, we got an updated packet, but that didn't, is that including these changes that?
No.
No, that's, okay, all right, I just want to make sure I'm reading the same one you guys are reading, okay.
Yes.
And along the same lines, so the original draft made me think that we were talking about promotions for more than just sergeant, but we're just talking about the sergeant's policy tonight, right? That's correct.
And Mike, when we talked earlier today, as you mentioned, this 433.1 policy will actually replace the 4.33 policy.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing all along, is that I always leave the old policy up for people to reference, so if I get questioned or if the board gets questioned, we know what people are asking about and to be transparent, so that's why we always add that additional one on there. And that's what I've done with the other policies.
I'd just like to comment that I think it looks like an interesting process in that it, as you said, you've broadened the scope and it's not just test-based, and I think that's great that we are looking at it in different ways, looking at each candidate in a variety of ways with different eyes, different people. Thank you.
It's, as I stated, like we did that for the interviews for the patrol positions, we're bringing members of the community in to really give us a fresh look.
Tom, can I make one comment?
Yes, sir.
Chief, I think it looked very good, and I appreciate the fact that we should probably make police policy reform a standing item on our agendas. I appreciate all the work you're doing on this. One thing that caught my eye was 3A, that says that all promotions will be posted internally for 7 days prior to any external posting, and it avoided the question of whether there would be an external posting. And for the position of sergeant, I think that's fair, kind of leave it catch as catch can. I just want to put a flag in the ground and say that for higher positions such as lieutenant, chief, if we ever have a deputy chief or captain, I would suggest that there be an assumption that we're going to have an external posting, an assumption that could be waived for the right reasons, ideally by the appointing authority, the Board of Selectmen. But for this policy, this looks fine to me.
Well, we can always develop for the lieutenant's policy for the promotion on that when that as we get closer. I know that Lieutenant Terrain has a few years left, so I won't have to come to the board right now on that. Yeah, I can wait a little bit, so that can be another reform agenda item.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, I think this looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Chief. So,
You ready for a
that
motion?
being said, I'm ready for a motion.
I move to approve the updated sergeant promotion policy as presented and amended by Stow Police Chief Michael Sallese.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Jim and Courtney, your ayes. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you very
Fine
much.
job as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Next up is we have an intermunicipal agreement for animal control services. And I will let our town administrator go through that.
So this is just to renew the services we have with the town of Boxborough. The agreement is fairly standard to the one we've had in place. The Board of Health has gone through it, I've gone through it, actually goes down slightly from the existing agreement, so we did lower the Board of Health budget slightly to these new amounts. So I recommend we sign the agreement and continue the arrangement that we have with the town of Boxborough. It works really well, the police do a really good job of triaging those calls, and I think it's a great arrangement for us.
I agree.
Questions, comments from the board? Ellen?
I had just one question. There's a reference to an animal inspector, which I can't find. What's the difference and who is it? I mean, I get the animal control officer, but it's a separate person, is that right?
Mike, do you know? I know you saw.
So, well,
The animal inspector?
Yeah, so I know that right now in this bill, so the responsibilities are different, and the animal inspector will go around to the barns, the farms around and actually inspect those animals, and the town clerk is on now, and I'm sure she can answer more on that too.
Yes, and that's, information through the agricultural department.
Okay.
She works with them, to get, as Mike said, the barn reports and the animal reports, livestock.
Right.
Not the cats and dogs.
The animal control is typically like some wild animals, and then the cats and dogs primarily.
But it's all Phyllis.
Correct.
Yes.
Oh, it is all the same person. That's, okay, thank you. That's, I was thinking, I hadn't heard of
I
anybody
thought
else.
so, but wasn't.
Right, okay, great. Thank you. All looks good.
Any other questions or comments? You know, I was just gonna say one thing. I had actually asked Denise earlier today on paragraph 8, kind of open-ended, and she, you know, because anytime there's a call-out for Phyllis after hours, it's at about $40 an hour for 4 hours minimum. And the police have been doing a fine job of keeping an eye on that. And so there's $2,500 budgeted, which seemed very reasonable to me. And you know, I always get hinky when I see open-ended numbers. So, but I'm in favor of it. So I'm happy to take a motion at this point.
Okay. I move
just
that,
make,
oh, sure. Go ahead, Courtney. I'm not.
sorry to
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead.
I'd just like to say what a wonderful job Phyllis does for us and thank her for her service, because just her demeanor is very kind and I think appropriate, and she can be firm and hold the line, but she is an excellent person, and I think she works pretty hard serving all these towns. So just a shout out.
I agree.
I want to echo that, she's there when you need her.
Awesome. Okay, I move that the selectmen approve and that the selectmen and town administrators sign the inter-municipal agreement with the town of Boxborough for animal control services for the period from July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022, as presented by the Board of Health.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Courtney, or ayes, vote unanimous. Next, we have an intermunicipal agreement for Making Connections pilot program, i.e. Go Stow. Regional transportation.
Yeah.
I will let our town administrator take on this
Certainly.
as well.
So this is one of 2 programs that we are implementing here. Jesse did a great job securing us in grants and some regional agreements. This one here is for, you'll see the communities listed: Sudbury, Acton, Bolton, Carlisle, Concord, Lincoln, Maynard, Stow, and Weston. It would utilize Lyft and Uber for off COA transportation hours. So if someone needs to go to a vaccine appointment, if someone needs to go to a food store, a doctor's appointment, this grant will cover the cost of that transportation. There is no cost to the town of Stow. We are, Sudbury is spearheading this. They will do the management of it. This will work collaboratively with another agreement that we have that is the taxi services. So we've already started to contract with taxi services under a similar idea, just with a different group. That we have a handicap accessible taxi and a regular taxi. It will be handled through the Council on Aging, and I believe it's 60 and over the COA will handle, and 60 or 59 and under will be our social worker will handle to determine the need for use of this transportation, to make sure that it's people that actually need these services and this transportation. They are pilot programs. We're going to see what happens. The Council on Aging is extremely excited. They think it will be a huge hit and it will definitely be utilized. They get a lot of calls for folks, especially now that there are doctor's appointments and things that are later in the day and our transportation ends at 4. So they either need to find their own transportation home or have volunteers go and pick them up. So this will be just a great way to supplement what we are able to provide. If we get a lot of utilization, then we can revisit it and determine if it's something that we can either apply for continued grants or if there's something that we want to incorporate with our own transportation services going forward. But I think it's a great program, and at no cost to us, in these first years. I think it's definitely worth seeing what the needs are in our community.
Questions, comments? Ellen?
So 2 questions. One is on page 1, on section 2 of term, it says it expires on May 21st.
Yes, so I've reached out to Jesse, but it was late this afternoon. It does say May 21st, and then the next sort of, it says, or when terminated in accordance with the agreement. I think the or will take care of that, but I am waiting on clarification for that.
And then I'm a little confused as to who is the, what do you call it, the person who's scheduling, you know, I mean, like right now, COA does their scheduling of the van and stuff. Is that also gonna be, I mean, who's, for this one in particular, it seems like that's a whole different kind of sort of issue around scheduling.
So I will admit, I'm not sure for this program. The taxi side, it's going to be dealt with through the Council on Aging. Gigi will do the main scheduling. If she is not the one approving the usage, then Brian will give her the okay to schedule it. I don't know if Sudbury is doing the scheduling or if that will also be handled here. Jesse was going to be here tonight, but then they have their public hearing, so I said we'll move forward. If the board has questions or concerns, we can certainly table it until he's available if you have more questions. But I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. I actually, and then, I guess, sorry, my last question was, in terms of the people who are eligible for it, it does say financially vulnerable residents, so I'm assuming that people that aren't COA members, go through the social worker to be, that's the qualification piece of it.
Yes, and it's not a free-for-all. I was saying to Tom earlier, you know, people aren't gonna be able to take a Uber or Lyft to Encore Casino. I mean, it's really doctor's appointments,
Right, that's still-
vaccines, food stores, things like that. It's really on a need base for these services that are imperative.
And I know Jesse said that I think for this one, maybe for both of them, that one of the big things is to be able to track the needs so that we can get hopefully more funding from the state to do more of these kind of programs.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
Yep.
Awesome.
Megan, questions, comments?
I don't, I actually am well versed on this from planning board, so I'm glad to see it's actually happening, because I know we had been talking about it for a long time, so.
Jim?
I think actually Courtney had her hand up long before me, but I do have some questions after her.
Courtney then.
Thank you, Jim. No worries, just wanted to be heard. I just actually wanted to say, that it feels to me, Ellen, like this is a great way to look at, as was said, at the demand for this kind of services, and I can imagine that, for, particular needs only, we're seeing perhaps only a third or a quarter of what public transportation use could be, and so it's a great way to see what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see this happen.
Yep.
Thanks, that's it.
Jim?
So Courtney just said one thing I wanted to say, which was that this is a great way to assess the demand. And then a question for Denise. I'm just a little confused about where we are on this. The materials made me think, maybe erroneously, that we're not yet in a pilot program, but you're making me think that we are, and it's being administered by Sudbury at no cost to us. Is that basically right?
So this program, yes, so there is a portion of the grant that will go to Sudbury to manage the overall program.
Okay.
And then the taxi service side, there are funds available if we need to give additional hours to the Council on Aging for scheduling and coordinating.
And then my only other comment is if this is ready to go, I hope we're going to publicize this somehow, at least on our own website.
Yes, the plan will be to put out a formal press release once we have all the specifics and the details available for folks.
Great, thank you.
I don't see any downside to it myself. I think it's a great way to find out what some of the needs are. So I'm happy to take a motion.
Okay. I move to approve and sign the Inter-Municipal Transportation Pilot Agreement known as Making the Connections as presented by the Planning Department.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jim?
Aye.
And Courtney is aye. Next up is disposition of surplus goods and equipment. And I will let our town administrator deal with this one also.
So I think this was fairly straightforward. We have, last October, we put in place the disposition policy. One of the requirements is, so first, facilities notified all the departments, folks were able to go down to Pompo, see what was there, if they needed anything for their department, they could access it and take it, and then it was notated on the schedule of where that equipment went. This is what's left. They, as you'll see, the first few pages, there's little to no value of some of these items. So we are asking to dispose of them now properly, which in most cases will be just tossing them out. Some of them we certainly could try and put on Municipal and see if there's any takers for it, but the first 30 items are
The old computers.
the first 47 items are pretty much useless to us. There is one item that we believe is valued at over $10,000. That is the 1941 Buffalo Springfield pressure cylinder scarifier from the highway department. So at this point, we're just asking to vote to dispose of it, and then we will go through the process to see if there is any value. We can put it on municipal bid. It may just be sold for scrap metal, but it does have more value than obviously keyboards and these other items.
It just was very sad to see how much of the stuff from the police department is like, thank goodness that you've given them some new computers.
Oh yes, Mike cleaned out the attic, I think.
There must be a lot more room out there now.
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting that most of it does seem to be the police
It
department.
was like the first 30.
Fire department found a couple things to toss in.
Yeah, right.
We got rid of our chairs.
Yes.
Oh, actually, I meant to ask about those chairs.
Item 36.
Yeah. What,
It's item
Quick question,
36.
yeah,
They were the ones from the room.
Yeah.
so we're getting new chairs?
Yes, yes.
Courtney?
Quick question. Denise, you said toss out, I imagine you meant that, not specifically, but casually. Is there material here that if there's nobody wants it and will buy it from us can be recycled, all these computers?
Oh, yes. They will be disposed of properly, whether that's recycled or brought to, I know Boy Scouts usually hold computer drives and things like that, yes.
Thanks.
I think we should hold one of the chairs from the room and put a plaque on it for Tom.
We should.
Who said we didn't give you anything? And we're clear, right? Because it doesn't have value, so we don't have to worry about breaking any rules.
Excellent.
It's like the garden, It's like, well, we had the Boston Garden chairs, now we have,
Yeah.
the Warren Room chairs. Yeah, okay. Anyway.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll accept the motion.
Right, I move to declare as surplus the goods and equipment on the list provided by the building commissioner valued at less than $10,000 and belonging to the town, and to authorize the disposal of these surplus items. And I move to declare as surplus the 1941 Buffalo Springfield pressure cylinder scarifier as listed by the building commissioner, valued at more than $10,000 and belonging to the town, and to authorize the disposal of this surplus item in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. All right, next up, town meeting discussion. And I believe our town moderator, Mr. Walrath, is probably around. He was earlier. Dave, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing okay tonight.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
So Denise, there were a couple questions that you had set up, is probably what time do we want to begin town meeting?
Yes, so I will back up and start with where do we want to hold town meeting?
right.
Last year's town meeting warrant was drafted for Hale. Obviously, it was held in Center. David actually came in today and he and I spoke at length about sort of some of these logistics. And I think that we are both in agreement that Center School is the best setup. And how we had it last year seemed to work best for the indoor-outdoor component, for social distancing and the equipment and so on.
I mean, I think Center, absolutely. My observation was there very few people were indoors last year, and it was a much hotter day than I anticipate we'd have in May. And there was definitely logistical problems of having two locations, so I'd love to see everybody outside if possible. I understand we still have tents we've rented and, but it just feels like it would be easier for everybody, particularly the moderator and the people, you know, the chair running the meeting, to have everybody in the same location.
So my only comments to that would be, you know, we can't plan the weather.
No.
Obviously, if there happens to be wind or rain. I do think that with the status of vaccinations, people will be more comfortable indoors. So I'll certainly defer to David to see what his thoughts are on that. I think it's probably easier with the technology to have the indoor component. Running things outside can be a little more difficult, but certainly see what he has to say and the rest of the board.
So I pretty much agree with Denise. I'd love to have it in one place. It makes life so much easier, and outside is the obvious choice. The two problems that I have with that are the one that Denise brought up, that we can't plan for the weather, and kind of a hope for the best, plan for the worst. I have a hard time saying we should plan for outside. I certainly could be talked into it, but the logistics of shifting everything from outside to inside or inside to outside is going to be a challenge. The other issue that I have that I mentioned to Denise was last year I didn't allow any PowerPoints. And that was because we couldn't realistically get something for outside. I'm more comfortable with that this year because people would be able to come inside. We might be able to find some options for setting up some sort of a screen outside. But again, that'd be a new logistical challenge if we did want to, or I assume we do want to allow the regular PowerPoint presentations. As much as it made it easier for me to not have them. So those are my two main concerns, and I'll let the selectmen give their opinions.
Megan?
Having been outside last year, I agree with Ellen that it obviously would be ideal to have it all in one place. However, I do understand, people, as much as people are getting their vaccines and stuff, I do think that people are still gonna wanna be spread out. And so I think, I think we're gonna have to do the inside, outside. What I'm hopeful is that, this year, maybe if the entire board is vaccinated, then maybe we can at least all be inside, or maybe other people can be inside, and then the presenters can more be inside. I know last year we had some feelings that we wanted to make sure that, some of the presenters were outside and some of them were inside, and so my hope is that, we can overcome some of the issues that we had last year. So I don't know, I'm again, last year, it was difficult, definitely, having it in two places, but I do think that it probably is still necessary to do it this year. Can I ask a quick question? Are we still planning on doing the voting with the little
Yes,
things again?
electronic vote, yes.
Perfect.
Jim, Courtney, thoughts? Courtney, any thoughts?
I agree that the inside-outside thing probably just makes sense. And the concern about presentations, I think it'd be really great if folks felt like the technological challenge was an exciting and interesting one to take on. Just for the sake of the people that aren't in the room with the presenters, whichever room that might be. And at the same time, it seemed like they handled the handouts really well last year, and there's something really great for me about having something right in front of me, because I don't have to worry about can I see it? Is the lady with the big hat in front of me, blocking my view? Do I have to get a particular seat in the house to be able to see the screen or hear the whatever, So maybe handouts are just great.
Well, and we will work on, we can certainly work on alternatives for a screen outdoors, and see what that capability would be.
Got some interesting technology now.
Yeah.
Jim, thoughts?
Very similar to Courtney, I think inside outside is probably still the best. Last year I actually thought there were a fair number of people inside, and I would expect this year there'd be more. Feeling comfortable with it. The technology of PowerPoint outside escapes me, but I'm sure there are people who it does not escape. But like Courtney, I thought I detected some advantages to no PowerPoint. Dare I say, I thought people maybe spoke a little faster.
There was a little bit of arm twisting on time.
It's not a bad precedent to set, Mr. Moderator. That's it, thank you.
And, if I had my druthers, it'd be all inside, but I don't think that's practical. I think we need to keep an outside component of it for this year. And at the other, while we had a good time last year, I also remember middle of May, it has snowed before.
That's right.
Yes, it
That
has.
was a few years ago now, though.
Yeah, we had Springfest one year
That's
where it was snowing and the kids were out.
It's always a possibility.
So, maybe global warming will take care of that, but, it would, last year we pushed it off, part of it because of the weather.
Right.
Because we wanted to make sure that it wasn't gonna be too cold and things like that, so having, I wouldn't be in favor of all outdoors,
That's a good point.
but I think what we had last year worked,
And center school, right?
and center school,
Definitely center.
so.
And we have to have it outside because we are, we're still bound by the limitation of
We are
people in
not.
a, oh, not anymore?
No, we never have been. Municipalities in Massachusetts, their legislative body is exempt from the requirements of COVID.
okay.
Because you have to conduct town business, so.
Right, okay.
So for some communities that can't make an outdoor component work,
Then they were just,
they have allowed us to be exempt from that process.
thank you for clarifying that.
I agree, I think that's the right argument. I am concerned, as the two select people that were outside, the sound was not dependable, and I'm wondering if Jonathan is.
So we bought some new equipment after
Oh,
last
okay.
year.
Perfect.
There should be an easy way to project. We would just need to get a screen of some sort. They have inflatable screens, we could rent something. As long as we can
I
connect
don't
to
think, I don't
school
think
Wi-Fi.
visible would be as hard as, like last year, it got windy, and then wind takes the voices we're carrying, and that was, that was a challenge, so. we don't have to get into it now, there was the use of the space outside was poorly used, so it wasn't marked off the same way the inside was, and so we didn't fit as many people under the tent, which would have been cooler, because people were spreading out and it was a little too spread, so,
Okay.
but that's a.
Okay.
But at least, last year we were going into it, we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got a much better idea this year, and so
Absolutely.
I think center school
Great.
and indoor-outdoor component,
Yeah.
is that the consensus? I don't know if we need to vote on it, but is everybody good with that?
Yep.
And
The one correction I discussed with Denise, that the town clerk had corrected me. We started last year at 9 a.m. and the selectmen should decide a starting time also. And 9 a.m. works for me.
That's great.
Get it done.
I'm good with 9. Everybody consensus good, 9?
Mm-hmm.
Linda had her hand up. Is that what you had to say, Linda?
No, my comment, that was not what I had to say, but my comment
Eight
had to be
o'clock.
about,
Yeah.
8 o'clock, right?
no.
No.
5 AM.
You lose.
No, my comment was, the Wi-Fi at center does not work outside. That was our issue last year. The school Wi-Fi does not work outside.
Yes, but we can bring in
Bring a
equipment
booster.
to
That's
fix
all,
that.
I just wanted to make sure. I'm done.
Not 5 a.m. though.
What was that?
Courtney?
Thank you, Denise, for being our calm person with technology.
Where there's a will, there's a way, Courtney. We'll get it done.
All right.
So 9 a.m., May 22nd, center, in and out.
Roger. Great.
Okay.
That's consent calendar.
Put that on the calendar.
All right, the other thing that we were going to talk about a little bit there was, Denise had some items that hadn't been on the consent calendar in the past. I believe it was veterans benefits and tax title proceedings. I think,
Is that what the stars meant? No, it's not.
I think that adding those to it, if it cuts 10 minutes off town meeting, we're good.
That's. Can you just explain why tax title proceedings should go into consent calendar?
So
Just
it's,
quickly.
yeah, I mean, it's a $2,000 appropriation that
Okay.
allows the treasurer's office to put properties into tax title. It is a
Okay.
statutory requirement that we do that, so
So just
funding
put it
it
in
is
consent, okay.
required.
And then veterans benefits is just a percentage by the state or?
It's our
it's our own?
appropriation,
Okay.
that we pay towards veterans benefits.
Okay.
And it is down this year, I think it's 26,000 is the requested amount, which is down from fiscal '21.
Yeah, that works for me.
Years ago, that number was very low because we weren't paying out a lot. It may actually have been in the consent calendar at one time, but then it took a big jump.
Got it.
And so any, historically, what we've tried to do is anything that's taken a big jump or, gone out of the ordinary, pull it out. And if it's going down and we're obligated to it, I think it makes sense to put it back in.
That makes sense.
At least for now.
Sure.
Anybody can pull one of them out if they have questions about it, so.
Okay.
And I think that Denise, you said you would talk to Dave earlier today, he was in favor of those. So, if nobody has any objections to it, I'd say add those. And I'd be as bold to say if Denise came across anything else that she felt should be in there. We still are in COVID. If we
Well,
can
that's
shorten the meeting up a little bit.
Right,
Yeah.
there are other things I think of things that, like the audit, we have to do it. It seems like that's not much of a discussion point. I think of the things we whip through anyway, holiday decorations and lighting fund.
Right, so those are all the consent calendar.
Oh, those are already
So-
on?
Yeah, it's
Article
after.
5.
Oh, it's very hard to,
34.
Yeah.
that's the repeat list,
Yes,
sorry.
they're already included.
Got it, okay.
Right, so
It
I
says
mean, I
beginning
wouldn't,
of-
we could certainly do like Lake Boone Patrol,
Yeah,
I
that
think
could go
it's
in there.
$1,500, or it's a small amount of money for, the summer,
repeated on this list, I guess.
Yeah, there are two of them.
There's summer work
That's what
there.
I didn't
What
catch that,
confused
okay,
That
got it.
goes separate then it's not a police line item.
No, so I will say, we can talk about obviously the warrant more in depth, but, I have changed some things. So chapter 90 should not be appropriated at town meeting. Those are state funds, that's a wasted time. The reserve fund should not be a separate article, it should be in the budget, we've moved that in the budget.
Okay.
The nursing services through the Board of Health, that used to be a separate article, that should be in the budget. So we have moved things to realign them, where they really should be funded. So the Lake Boone Patrol is $5,000 for May to October call-outs for the lake. I mean, I think that's fairly standard, it happens every year, we could certainly move something like that in. I
To
went by
consent
what's been in
calendar,
there.
not as a police line item
Correct.
because we share that with Hudson or?
No, really for no reason other than it's the lake and it's
Okay.
summer hours and
Okay.
it certainly could be moved
not
into the budget.
annual.
Okay.
The Lake Boone
but-
Patrol is just, it's our boat, it's kept down there, staffed by a Stow police, reserve police officer actually.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so
That's good with me.
if Denise, I suppose what I'll do is, if Denise comes across a couple of others, is everybody okay with putting them in there as long as Dave's okay with it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Would you be willing to just work with Denise on that, Dave, if both of you guys agree?
That's what I've done in previous years, so sure.
All
I
right.
don't envision anymore unless something comes in, unless something's submitted in the next few days. And I don't think we will move planning or CPA articles and consent, so I think this is pretty much it.
Would be fun.
So,
Okay.
Perfect.
so the logistics and the consent calendar and, Dave, is there anything else you'd like to bring up about town meeting or, well, while we've got you here?
No, I can't think of any. Linda brought up we brought up a couple of minor, I should say, other logistical issues. Is there anything that any of the selectmen can think of that would improve this flow of the meeting?
I think it went as smooth as it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as it could last year, you know, having the two, so
I
I
think
can't.
Courtney has a comment.
Courtney?
There was another technical issue with the sound on the stage, being on the stage, and I think the speakers were placed funny, so I'm sure Jonathan's probably aware of that, but, you know, maybe double check all that, make sure it works great before we get into it.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I made a note of that last year. For those that didn't notice, I was walking in front of the podium a lot because I couldn't hear anything where I was standing
Oh.
behind the lectern, actually.
All right, if there's nothing else, can move on to, thank you, Dave. And we can move on to the budget discussion. I think Denise ended up very nicely preparing a letter explaining where all the heavy hitters were. And, at the bottom of that, she's saying, you know, that the budget is up, about 2.14% over FY 2021. She had already
Thanks
got.
Denise for the summary.
Yep.
You're welcome.
I think these realignments make a lot of sense. The new staff positions, and I'm kind of amazed that that all of these changes are being made and it's only an increase of 2.14% because it seems like some redundancies are getting worked out and I think that this is going to help for sure, so thank you.
Well, as I mentioned in the letter, you know, I would likely not be recommending sort of all of these changes if we had a a large school assessment.
Right.
But in a year that we have that capacity,
Mhm.
we should look to not take advantage of it, but capitalize on it, and sort of add some of these things that I really do feel are necessary for the town, the residents, and the departments.
Spending still is going up $1.25 million over prior year. But,
But I think what I really am struck by is that I actually think we are gonna see a lot of savings in terms of not only maybe potentially actually dollars, but I'm thinking more in terms of like getting things done well and being smarter about it. And I mean, I think, you know, the HR assistant town administrator is just a excellent example of, you know, giving you flexibility, so if HR doesn't take them 40 hours a week, you know, they can do other duties that you need them to do, but you know, that we've spent an awful lot of money on lawsuits and other things, not to mention the stress of the staff and not having people they can go to for HR issues. And you know, we have that many employees, we should honor them by having someone that they can talk to about that stuff, so.
Right, and I agree, and I think, you know, we've started with policies, but, you know, to me, training is just as important as policies, and a trained workforce is a more efficient workforce, it's a safer workforce, we have to comply with OSHA requirements now. Thankfully, Steve has been sort of spearheading that in the highway department, but that should all filter back to one person to track training and credentials and certifications and things like that to make sure that we are in compliance and that our employees are staying safe. And we have not had that ability with sort of one person overseeing that.
now, if I read this correct, we're still gonna have about 2.7 in unused levy capacity,
Yes,
which is actually an increase from last year.
correct.
You know,
We will be using more free cash, though. The capital improvements voted last week on their projects, supporting pretty much everything. Some dollar amounts were tweaked, but it does come to the $958,000 that's being supported. So again, I think in a year that we have free cash, we have the capacity, let's get some of this equipment replaced, get some of these capital items going, because if we don't, they're just gonna keep piling up on us, so.
Well, that's it. The big hitters that I saw were Minuteman, 300 grand almost.
So we knew that was coming.
And then special articles and capital articles between the two of them, it's about 450. And then other miscellaneous stuff, you know, that's darn close to $750,000 out of the $1.25 million, so all the other stuff adds up to $500,000. And we know 85 of it is HR direct, and so we kind of know where the money's going. Any questions, comments? Jim,
Courtney had a comment.
Courtney? Courtney?
Yeah, I think Courtney was first.
You might have just said it, I had a question about what the balance of free cash would be after expenditures.
So the fiscal 20 free cash will be, what are we using? 2.5. Still over $1 million. I don't have the exact number available, but we'll still have over $1 million in fiscal 20 free cash.
And one other question, can you explain to me, about the overlay account? So when there's an unused portion of that, does that return to the general fund?
No, so normally overlay can be used for capital items or it can be reappropriated out. You know, I like to, it's another savings account that we have access to. So I think we don't need to take money from that on an annual basis. You know, if there's a year that we don't have free cash or don't wanna use free cash, then we could certainly appropriate out overlay. But I'm just not, I don't like to tap into that year after year. Again, it's just another reserve account that we have.
Got it, thanks.
Jim?
Just a couple of things, and first I want to note that the capital is high compared to our historic average, but not to our recent average. Compared to recent years, it's actually a little bit on the lower end. But my main comments were on your memo, Denise. Like the other members of the board, I really liked having this memo, and I think the first thing I want to say is I hope you're going to say a version of this at town meeting. Bill didn't like to do that, but I think this would be, a summary like this would be very helpful to the voters.
I'm gonna put this on the website, but I can certainly talk about it at town meeting as well.
Right. I in particular like the assistant TA, HR director, as part of your continuing effort to beef up the HR function, and I wholeheartedly agree with your rationale for giving it the flexibility of assistant TA. And I will say, because there was a night last week, Wednesday night, Denise was at capital planning until 10 o'clock, and I'm assuming she got to work at her usual 6:30, and that is too long of a day, and it wouldn't be bad to have somebody else who she could let go to an occasional meeting. And even little things like having the call lieutenant show up at the beginning of the shift, presumably to take attendance.
Mhm.
That is a simple function. It's one that we ought to be doing and ought to have been doing, and I'm glad to see that we're going to be doing it. That's it.
This is not something I think we need to take a vote on right now.
I have more questions.
Oh, you have more questions? I'm sorry.
You kidding? Of course I have questions.
My apologies,
I
my
went through
apologies. Go for it.
So one of the great things I noticed towards the end is there is a whole bunch of new expenses and that's a lot of software stuff, which again, efficiencies, putting money in so that we can get more done, which is awesome. But then I went back to the IT department and it's not changing. And is it really realistic? Because Ron's only part-time, is that right?
Yes.
Is that given that you're beefing up an awful lot of technology, does that still make sense that we only have a part-time person? Obviously,
Not
there's lots of
potentially.
things you'd like to do, but
Yes.
I'm just,
Yes, that is one of those items that's more long-term to figure out what the right look of that department is. The reason it's not changing though is because we were paying a significant amount of money to Amaranth for the web services and the email, and the new contract is actually less. So when we factor out some of the changes and the upgrades that we've made, we replaced a significant number of computers this year. Obviously, those don't need to be replaced next year. So we are, so there are still upgrades and improvements in the funds that are going to the IT department. And that will be something that will likely be a focus of next year.
and then, I'm trying to find, there was something that went, well, you touched on it earlier, the veterans benefits that changed a lot, and I can't find it right now, but, what makes that change so much? And Tom was saying that in the past it might have changed even more.
So it depends who lives in town, what benefits they're afforded and approved for. So it's very common for that appropriation to fluctuate as people move in and out, move into senior housing. And if someone comes in that has a lot of medical issues that are approved, obviously those costs go up.
Right.
So it did go from,
Now I find it.
so this time it wasn't, it
47 to
was, 29,000 down to 26. But I know in the past it has been much higher.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And years ago, it was down to 5, I think.
Is that, yeah,
And then we had, one or two people that came in that were eligible for benefits, so it shot up.
Right, and when you only have a handful, one person coming in makes a huge difference, so.
Right.
So there can be a big jump that's unexpected if someone moves into the district.
right. The one that confuses me, and I'm sure there's an explanation, but on the health department, overall, it actually didn't change very much particularly from what they asked to what you're proposing, but the line items changed radically.
Yes,
can you just explain why that is?
So we have been budgeting for expenses under salary line items, plain and simple. So the money that we pay out to Neshoba Board of Health, that is a contract, it is an expense paid through accounts payable. It has been included in a salary, which is a payroll line item. So that is just to put it to where it should be charged accordingly.
I figured that's what it was, but I wanted you to explain it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right, okay. I think, and I guess just a comment on the, which I had mentioned to you, in the last few weeks around the community center. You know, when we started Pompo, one of my huge frustrations is that we sort of dumped it on the building inspector and assistant building inspector, and we should, as a town, saying, this is a community center, we should have someone managing the property. It shouldn't, it's all falling on the COA, and they don't have the staff to do it. And I'm just really hope that next year we can get a facilities person who's actually dedicated to the building. And you know, we have a terrible track record of taking care of our buildings generally, so to maybe in the facilities world that we can start looking at getting someone who's not one of those departments, but is someone who's just a receptionist or office manager, because I think it's the inefficiency of them having to use volunteers that they have to train essentially every day is just not fair to them and not helpful for the people who are trying to, you know, reserve the rooms or whatever, so.
So yes, you mentioned reception, but are you also talking facilities separately?
Well, it's the idea that we have a community center staff. I mean, I think that the facilities part is something that sort of falls, and I can't speak to how it works right now in terms of all of our town buildings, but I think that, to me, that's sort of where a department sort of could live, that it's facilities and community center management. And we talked about it when we first created Pompo as having someone who was gonna manage that, but it seems to have never happened.
So they do, the facilities department does have money, and they do have a community center manager that's down there for events. They have like an event manager that coordinates what's going on, makes sure doors are locked and keys and stuff like that. That certainly can be something that, you know, when we do work towards the goals of the town and the board, we can certainly have a goal be, you know, to look at facilities or look at the community center as a dedicated building, if you will, versus having it be in the rotation of the other buildings.
Jim?
I have to seize the opportunity to say something. I think that the issue of facilities management and the related issue of the facilities capital plan, which is one area where I think we could be doing a better job. These are great issues for a work plan with the town administrator that we have spent about 20 minutes on in the past year, and I'd really like to see us, presumably after the election and after town meeting, of course, really like to see us make some progress on putting together something. This is a perfect kind of issue for something like that.
I agree.
Go Courtney.
All right,
Other questions, Ellen?
nope, that's all, everything I got. I'm very happy with it.
Do you not have any questions?
Courtney, you good? Jim, you're good?
I am, thank you.
All right. I don't think there's actually any action for us to take on this at this point.
So I will be putting my letter, and I will be scanning all of the requests from each individual department in a packet to put online, so that folks can go on there and look at, every department submitted a cover letter. I had them identify sort of goals of their department, so there's a lot of good information. Really talks about the departments and why the funds are needed, so I would encourage folks to, my goal is to get that up by the end of this week. So I would encourage folks to get up there, read it, look at the budget so people are prepared going into town meeting. You know, I don't believe in surprises. I'm happy to talk about it with anybody. I'm happy to discuss the increases that I'm proposing. I stand by them wholeheartedly, and I will be happy to talk about anything in the budget with any resident or voter or board member. that has questions, so.
And the finance committee meeting, the budget hearing is a week from today.
Yes, it is, next Tuesday, the 20th. So they actually are doing, it's more than their budget, I guess they do a public hearing on all of the articles as well. So I've told the finance committee they will have a fairly finalized draft of the warrant. Actually, I won't have their letter, so I might not have all spelling and grammar checked, but I'll have all the articles together. That will also be posted. I know when I was speaking to David earlier, he said one of the issues in the past was the warrants were never posted in advance, so that when people went to that public hearing, they had nothing to reference. So that will be posted. People can follow along with the discussion on at least the articles that are being presented.
Awesome.
All right. Next, it appears we have a discussion of March 10th, 2020 executive session minutes. And having been there, I
Remember that
read the
part?
packet, you know. It's actually rather interesting because it's, I think 2 days later, they started shutting it, or 3 days later, they started shutting down the state.
That's right. Your last
Yes.
meeting in person.
So if I may, so this is, as you know, one of Joyce's tasks has been to go through and see what minutes have been done and have not been. She came across this meeting. We had reached out, Jim actually had some information, so he sent us some information that was not in Bill's activity report that was in the packet from that time. There is nothing in the file, there are no notes, so quite honestly, this is what she was able to compile. Obviously, there are no formal votes that are identified. We do know you did vote on these items because it is mentioned in, I think, the June 9th meeting. It references back votes that were taken at this executive session. The contracts were finalized, we do have those online, so I'm confident that if anyone questions anything, we do know the outcome of that, but we don't know the specifics. So I wanted to put it on as a separate discussion item, just so that the board members that obviously were there, if you recall anything, make sure you're comfortable with approving sort of just, you know, what happened, not necessarily who voted what, but at least there'll be some record. You will have a couple other minutes, I think there are some from 2018 executive session that she's working on now. She may be reaching out to look for what information you guys have on those as well. Quite frankly, I've told her not to go back any further. We'll make sure everything from 2018 through present is accounted for. And only if something comes up will we go back to see prior years, just because we go down a rabbit hole. Minutes reference other minutes, then when you go to those minutes, it was never voted, and so this will be nice and clean for the last few years.
And since Megan and Ellen weren't there, I'm just gonna stick with Jim and Courtney. Your thoughts, Jim?
So I certainly don't remember the contract specifically, but Denise, has verified them that they're there and signed, so that makes complete sense. They were in Bill's activities report. It's the High Rock Church discussion that Kathy and I had to piece together from notes and calendar appointments and things like that. But the discussion here, I remember it. This was the end of it. I remember having the general discussion. And I think this is accurate. We had this discussion at some point, and I'm pretty sure it was March, from Kathy's calendar in particular, I'm pretty sure it was March 10th.
Courtney?
I don't think I've got much to add. It feels accurate to me.
And I echo that, typically, after Bill had negotiated contracts, he would bring them to us just to make sure that, there wasn't anything that we had a big problem with, but they were pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered by the time he brought them to us. We do them in executive session, and as long as we said everything was good, then, he would execute those contracts and move forward. High Rock Church, I remember, talking about that in executive session, because we were trying to determine whether we wanted to, what we wanted to do with it, but we decided that we'd kind of play it loose, but that had to be done in executive session also because it was, how we were going to negotiate the stuff. So I'm actually confident that this is probably pretty accurate, or as accurate as it's going to get.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve and release the March 10th, 2020 executive session minutes. I'm interested in the town administrator's input on that. I don't see any reason not to release them.
I would agree.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
I assume we're gonna abstain.
You guys can abstain, or, you can vote based on,
No, we have to abstain, we weren't
I
there.
don't think that's true, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you don't have to.
Oh.
If you're confident that the minutes,
but you're free to abstain also.
I'm going to abstain.
Alright, so. Alright, next, more minutes. Alright, March 23, 2021.
can I ask, are you skipping my report and your liaison?
Oh,
reports?
Jeez, I was just so excited.
I'll be really quick.
Thank you, Denise.
So I only really have a couple quick items. And Kate and Jamie stole two of mine, so I will be much quicker. I want to, for those of you who are not aware, the COA has a free food program. So if folks in town are in need of assistance, please call the Council on Aging between 10 and 11, and they will give you a time to go in and shop their food. There are no age requirements and there are no income requirements. So please, residents, if you need access to food right now, the COA has a ton down there to choose from, and I would encourage anyone that, again, is looking for some help in this area to call the Council on Aging on that. If boards and committees are looking to utilize outdoor space, if they want to start having some socially distant meetings, please make sure you schedule that with Laura in Recreation. People are starting to request that space, so we want to make sure that if people show up there, they have the space available. So pavilions, gazebos, that will be coordinated through Laura in Recreation. Jamie touched upon the 16-town Neshoba area vaccination clinic. When the news came down, we were all excited for a minute, and then we sort of went into panic mode about how we actually facilitate getting 2,000 vaccines a day accomplished. So we are scheduling a meeting. I did talk to Chief Landry today as the Emergency Management Director of what he can provide, should we need to provide resources in terms of bodies. We have the funds through the CARES Act if we need to put a monetary contribution forward, but I think they're looking for more EMTs, paramedics, doctors and nurses. So once we coordinate with the 16 of us, we can coordinate our local resources, whether that's with the MRC, whether that's with volunteers, or whether that's with our existing staff. I should know more in the next couple of weeks as we start working through those details. So while I am optimistic, I'm still hesitant that, I just don't know if it's gonna happen, because it's a hefty requirement on us. And lastly, I've mentioned to a few of you in the last week or two, I will not be at your next meeting. I will be on vacation starting next Friday, the 23rd. I will not be here on the 23rd. And then I will be back in the office a week and a day later on that Monday, May 3rd. This was something that when I came here to negotiate my contract was already set. It was in my sort of specifics that I came to the board with, went back and forth on whether or not to still go forward with it. I will be fully vaccinated, so quite frankly, I just need to go away. So I will be heading down to Florida, and I'm looking forward to the hot tropical heat and sun for a week or so. As always, I'm available by email, phone call, text message. I did tell department heads that I'm gonna try and check my email only once or twice a day, but always, call or text if anyone needs me. And that is all I have for you this evening.
I had a question. So you included the audit in the materials, and I had actually asked Denise earlier, in the nonprofit world, boards always meet with the auditors directly. I asked if that was a municipal norm. because I didn't remember seeing that here. So I guess that's an open question for you about having a meeting at some point with the auditors.
Yes, quite honestly, I don't know if it's happened in the past. I think it's important. I was telling Megan earlier, when I went to my prior community, I went there, the board's like, oh, you haven't made, everything's great, the finances are in great condition. On my first day, I opened up an audit report and I was shocked, and I called the chairman of the board, and they had never seen an audit report, never talked to the auditors, they had no idea what was going on. I think it's very important for you to see the reports, which I sent out, and hear from the auditors, ask them your questions directly. You know, they'll do a great job of explaining things sort of in layman's terms. You know, some people see audit reports and, you know, don't understand the way municipal finance works, and I think it's healthy to do that, whether it's annually or every couple of years, but I think they should come before you and have that conversation. So I will schedule that, you know, for some time over the next, you know, maybe again, once we get through town meeting, but that's definitely on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I would just want to add, I think it was important, particularly since it wasn't Denise's year. She wasn't here for this fiscal year, and particularly the management letter has some very concerning comments that, as someone who gets to read these all the time, there was a little too many items there that hadn't been addressed. And, you know, I have no doubt that you'll be addressing them, but I think having that conversation with the auditors before they start the next year's audit would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So, great, thank you.
Liaison reports. Let me start with you, Courtney.
I have nothing.
Do I
That was
have
quick.
to say your thing?
Jim?
I don't have too much. As you've heard, the FinCom's public hearing is next week. Capital Planning did finish its review, pretty much finished its review of items in one long night. Approved the remaining items, as Denise said, some tweaking downward of the amounts. Not too much of a consensus on one highway department item, a bucket truck. Possibly will be revisited, but capital planning is pretty much done. Library, I think most of us are familiar with their last meeting, and I think I'll just say that they are addressing that with some outside help in the near future. I'll leave it at that.
Megan?
Planning board is meeting tonight. They're working on finalizing their articles for the warrant. Town Hall Restoration Committee did meet last week. We discussed a workflow moving forward, and really coming up with a plan, now that we're not requesting any funds from town meeting, sort of regrouping and, you know, figuring out how we're gonna move forward. So that was that. And then the Lake Boone Commission, I've been forwarding you a couple of emails about questions about access for people to the lake. And so I know that that Chris from the Lake Boone Commission is gonna work with Kathy, sort of going down to around the Halleck's Point area and just making sure that that there was just some question about who owned the property, and it's Concom. So that's been happening. That's all I have for right now.
Ellen?
Yeah, so Minuteman, Dr. Boquillan just announced he's gonna be retiring at the end of next year, at the end of the school year 22, which is really sad. Good for him. He's certainly earned it and has done an enormous amount of work over there, so we'll have time to send him off appropriately. Magic had a legislative breakfast with Senator Eldridge and Representative Hogan were both there, as well as a number of our regional reps. And it was actually a great discussion, really interesting, but I think we heard most of those highlights through them. We're almost done with our annual perambulation, or our 5-year, whatever, what would you call a 5-year?
5-year.
Quintessential or something?
Yeah, something like that. So I will be probably at the next meeting doing a little more of a report on what, one of the things we're always supposed to do is report on some of the stones that might need to be replaced or markers that are missing. And I guess it's been a while, according to Greg, that we've done that, so I have asked to put that on next time's agenda just to go over what we've learned. We've finished the corners. We didn't finish all the boundary lines, but we have finished the corners, so. Recreation, was hoping to add some more seats to the Camp Stow enrollment. I don't know if that's happened. It's a little hard to find their website, but, because it's not on our website, but you can call the recreation department, find out if there's still slots available. And they're working on, what the rules are gonna be for opening the beach this summer in terms of the numbers that are gonna be allowed and that sort of thing, so. And that's enough, that's it.
Okay. I was disappointed that the Stow Police Department only collected 1,200 pounds of food. We were beaten by Lancaster, but not by Bolton. But in talking to Chief Sallese today, one of the things he said is Project Wheat is the real winner out of the whole thing. They got, sounds like about 3,000 pounds of food between 3 towns, so that was really good stuff.
Cool. Good for them.
One of the things, as far as actual liaison reports, I don't have anything else other than that. But as Denise mentioned, she's gonna be away during our next meeting. We actually only have 2 meetings left before town meeting.
Okay.
So we have the week that Denise is gone, all right? I'm going to be gone I'm gonna be out of town the week of May 1st to 8th. So I've asked Courtney to coordinate with Denise for the next meeting after that, as far as checking the agenda. One of the things that I started thinking about is that where we're doing a Saturday town meeting, we are going to, the first meeting in May will be a week or so before town meeting. Well, so what we'll do is we actually have the ability, if we wanted to have an additional meeting, if we needed it. We could do one on the 3rd weekend in May.
The 18th.
The 18th. Yeah, the 18th. So I kind of just wanted to mention it to maybe try to keep your calendars open in case we do need it. I don't think, if we don't need it, we won't do it, but we'll probably have a much better idea on after we have the first meeting in May. But other than that, it's, it seemed like a good idea to maybe try to pencil it in.
And you mentioned the meeting of the 22nd. You wanted a meeting before town meeting?
Oh, yes, we'll,
Like at 8.
Morning.
so we'll probably schedule a meeting at 8 or 8:30, but we can discuss the actual time then. I'm sure I'll be up there, and probably everybody will be up there by 8 o'clock or so. But what we'll do is one of the meetings beforehand, we'll see, with Denise out, I'm sure we're not gonna get into a lot of substantive stuff for that meeting because we won't have her find guidance.
No, but I will be asking because of the time. So you will need to vote on the warrant, because it needs to go to press the following week.
Yep.
So we can certainly spend the meeting of the 11th, really going in depth to every article, that would be fine. But I will send you the draft as soon as it's ready next week, so you have plenty of time, and I'm happy to answer questions beforehand. But you will need to at least make that vote that night.
Right. But, yes, Jim, will you?
Well, 2 questions. When do we have a vote on the right of first refusal on Halleck Point, and when are you thinking about recommendations on town meeting warrant articles?
So the chapter 61 hearing is scheduled for the 27th, which is the next meeting. But there is time that if it needed to be continued for a meeting, if you weren't ready to vote on the 27th, we have time for that on the 11th as well. And then for recommendations, so quite frankly, the one that is printed with the Action Unlimited, I don't know that we'll have recommendations, because I don't know that FinCom will have theirs sort of ready either. But then we can make those and print and post online your recommendations well before town meeting.
We generally haven't had our recommendations in the warrant typically. But, you know, that's kind of some of the stuff that it's in some cases, Jim, you know how we were making recommendations on the budget right before town meeting last year, granted.
Right, okay, well, I guess we'll figure it out.
But I'll work with Denise on that stuff, make sure we get everything done that needs to be done. But, you know, it just surprised the heck out of me that all of a sudden we've just got two regular meetings left, and Denise is gonna be gone for one of them, so I started going, uh-oh.
Sorry.
That's okay, you're entitled to take it.
Certainly earned it.
So, that's pretty much all I had. So now we can do the minutes, right, Denise?
Yes, please.
Did you miss anything else?
Nope.
We have minutes of March 23rd, 2021. Questions, comments, corrections? Oh,
Very.
everybody thought they looked good?
Yep.
Willing to take, I'll accept the motion.
I move to accept the meeting minutes of the March 23rd, 2021 meeting as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Jim and Courtney are aye. Minutes of July 8th, 2020. And this is when you guys started last year.
This was our first meeting? Guess it was.
Questions, comments, or corrections? They looked good to me.
Very thorough.
So Joyce has obviously been doing a fine job.
Yes.
So I'll take a motion if nobody
Okay.
has any comments or corrections.
I move to accept the meeting minutes of the July 8th, 2020 meeting as presented.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
All in favor? Jim, Courtney? Courtney?
I,
Aye, good.
This actually, can I just, I just realized that you were chair by then. Did we have minutes that voted, did we have to have minutes to vote that meeting? You know, we do that short meeting that vote you as chair?
That was our, so I did those a few
Oh, you did
weeks
those?
ago, that was like a quick meeting that I put, yes, I had done
Thank you.
those ones.
I'm just thinking, you know, don't wanna find out next year we forgot to do one, so,
No.
okay, all right.
I took the quick meetings and did those myself.
All right. Okay.
And then that just gave her, what do you call it? Encouragement to make sure she
That's right.
hired somebody.
That's right,
I don't wanna have to do all these.
Mhm.
All right, next up, minutes of June 18th, 2020. And at this meeting, it was Jim, Brian, Courtney, and myself, so there were only, this was before you,
Before us.
Megan and
Before
Eldridge.
us.
Or before the election.
Minutes looked okay to me. Jim, Courtney, they look okay to you?
Fine, I'll move the minutes of June 18 as presented.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Jim and Courtney are aye. Megan,
I'm
Ellen,
abstain.
abstain. So we're good. Minutes of June 9th, 2020. Again, it was Jim, Brian, Courtney, and myself. They looked good to me. Jim, Courtney?
I just want to say, boy, these look familiar. I could have sworn we approved these, but
So I will say there were
Thanks for
some minutes that stated they were approved, but then we couldn't find any record of them actually being approved, so you may have seen versions of some of these. Some said approved with amendments, we couldn't find amendments, so you may have reviewed something similar.
thank you for your thoroughness.
Yes, very much appreciated.
And-
And I will move the minutes of June 9, 2020 as presented.
Second,
All in favor? Courtney?
aye,
Jim?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Megan and Ellen abstain. All right.
Oh, that was the night I was appointed.
Huh?
That was
Yes,
the night I was
right,
appointed.
that's when you got a job.
All right.
And so if I just make comment on these, so the executive session, both of these matters obviously pertain to the same topic. It's obviously been closed, the documentation is public, that's why I'm asking you to vote on them in a public meeting.
That's why I was just gonna confirm. And we have the minutes of executive session for June 9th, 2020.
Yes, so this is when you'll see the notes that the minutes were noted approved for content and release, but there was no record of the minutes actually being approved. So these were drafted by Maureen. Joyce went through and checked the notes and checked the minutes and that were there for it, so.
Jim Courtney, it looked good to me. And
I'll move the minutes of the June 9th, 2020 executive session as presented.
second,
is that a motion? These can be released? And so, Jim, do you want to amend that to approve and release?
And I'll amend my motion to approve and release.
seconded,
All in favor? Aye. Courtney,
aye,
Jim? You say yes, Jim?
Yes, aye.
Okay,
Abstain.
and then we have 2 abstentions. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I should be
That's
asking
okay.
you guys if you're abstaining.
Think we got it.
My apologies.
That's fine. We're almost done.
Blanket
And
abstention.
then the executive session for May 1, 2020. And again, Jim, Brian, Courtney, and myself.
May I make an amendment to your minutes?
Mhm.
Because now that I'm seeing it, I was not present for a portion of the meeting that it says at the beginning. I was not on May 1st. So I think that sentence needs to be removed.
All right. I will let you take care of taking your name off there.
Thank you.
I got very confused with the timing when I saw that.
We were just inviting you in for executive session, you know, see if you liked us or not.
Get to an executive session, anyway.
Good catch, Denise. Now it's good, you're gonna question and start looking at the other ones to see what other meetings you attended.
I did, I checked those.
Um,
Tom, I'll just say, this doesn't sound familiar to me. I don't recall some sort of preliminary statement by town council. I certainly recall the investigative report. But if this is the day that it was done, then I'm fine with it. Everything else we just approved that was done while I was chair, I kind of remember to some extent or not. This I don't.
I vaguely remember, town council putting something together. But I suppose I don't think there's anything in there other than that, you know, we would have gone into executive session just to discuss any statement that we were thinking about releasing relating to this matter, so.
All right, based on you having some memory of it, I will move to approve the executive session minutes of May 1, 2020 as amended, or as presented.
No, amended.
As amended.
Release wasn't in there.
Thank you, as amended and to release them.
I'll second that and just say that this was probably the first time we spoke with this matter, were able to speak of this matter in a meeting.
No, we have had at least one emergency meeting, and I think one regular meeting.
What else, was April 19th was according to Google. So,
It
That
was
was only two.
Saturday, April 18th, Patriots Day weekend.
post pages.
Our emergency meeting was that Wednesday, and then we had a regular meeting the following Tuesday, I thought. But nonetheless, if Tom has a memory, I'm good to go with it.
Well, my memory isn't what it used to be. So. But, all right, all in favor? Aye. Courtney
Aye.
and Megan and Ellen?
Abstain.
You wanna sign on to this?
No, we're abstaining
No,
on
I'm
that.
gonna abstain from all of it.
All right, we have correspondence. One of the things I was gonna mention, I saw that we had an invitation from Maynard
Yes.
Yes.
to see if anybody from the board wanted to, be part of their Founder's Day celebration. I'm not gonna be able to make it that day, but, I don't know if anybody else would be able to.
It's this
I was hoping
Monday.
to,
Go ahead.
I was hoping to go, I may be out of town, so not gonna commit. But if
I
I'm
will
in
be out
town,
of
I will
town.
go.
I'm in exactly the same spot. I'd like to go when I was planning on, but I may not be able to.
Well, let's have a unanimous. I might be able to, but I might not be here, so.
Denise, do you think you could send them a quick note saying regrettably, we're all gonna be out of town that day?
Well, I'll relay that several members, are hoping to attend if their schedules allow or something like that. And we will thank them for the invitation and including us.
Is there anything else anybody wanted to talk about in the correspondence? Yep.
That was all we had.
All right. And unless there's anything anybody else thinks I might have missed, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Yes, move to convene an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A-2, to conduct contract negotiations with the town administrator and to adjourn thereafter.
Second?
Roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Ellen?
Yes, aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are now in executive session. So, Jonathan, if you can shut it down, please.